Hey everybody, how's it going? We're doing a quick video tonight on resin printing. We're going to switch things up a little bit, and we're going to talk about the basics, real basics on Chitubox and adding supports yourself, and not necessarily relying on the auto supports. So here we go. So I'm going to do this keycap. This is a Moai keycap. These are the manual supports that I've put in. I'm going to print this in some nice little ruby red Elegoo. Is this Elegoo or Anycube? I can't remember. Maybe it's Elegoo translucent red resin, and go from there. So why don't we go ahead and delete this first off. So if we highlight here or pick here and hit delete, then that gets rid of it. So let's open a file and bring in a new one. And you can see it brings it straight in onto the build plate, right in the middle, and flat on the build plate. If you're printing lots and lots, even if you're not printing lots and lots, I would recommend you move this around every once in a while and not always print dead center in the middle of your FEP. It's like rotating your tires. Move things around and you won't have a big wear spot or creases or bubbles or things like that. You can limit those sorts of FEP defects if you keep moving this thing around. You'll get a longer life. So anyway, for tonight's practices, we'll keep this in the middle. But to move it around, you just click and drag. So anything you print flat to the build plate will have an elephant's foot in resin printing. It's unlike FDM, where you can sort of limit that first layer squish. That first layer squish is an absolute necessity in resin printing. So anything that's printed flat on the build plate will be overexposed on purpose in order to stick it to the build plate. You can combat that with a couple of things like sandpaper, post-processing it, and then the other way is to rotate your print. Printing things on angles will eliminate much of the elephant's foot, and adding supports to get it up off the build platform. So you can tell what's on the build platform because this whole thing is green. What's not on the platform is the stem, because there is about a millimeter or two gap. Now, technically, yes, I could print this flat on the build plate. I will have some issues with this overhang on the chin and the overhang here on his nose. But let's pretend those aren't there and I print them flat to the build plate. Taking the elephant's foot scenario into account, this will not fit any keyboard, MX Cherry keyboard, once it's done, because the elephant's foot will now throw this, this entire opening. It will make the key too wide, and it will close in the opening of this stem, so it won't fit on the keyboard. And that is just the side effect of the elephant's foot. So we're going to go ahead and angle this. Now I found by printing these over and over and over again, printing these at about a 30-degree angle makes a big difference. So now all I would have is a line here touching the build plate, but it doesn't matter because we're adding support, so the whole thing is going to get lifted up. So to add supports, you hit the support button here. Automatically, I've got it set to where I'm adding this sort of raft here underneath, but if you want to see what you're doing, you come all the way to the bottom. And now these lines here tell you these are your layer lines, or what it thinks is your layer lines, and the red areas are where you want to focus on your support areas. So you can tell here I've got some red behind the ears, so I'll probably add some supports there, and I'll definitely add some supports all under this area, but strategically. So if I were to actually, let's play game, and let's do auto supports, and I've got my density here set at, so 30% density on my supports. So let's do auto supports, we'll build from platform. And you can see here, it's done a couple of randos here behind the head, behind these two spots that were red, which is good. I'm not sure why that guy's there. Why it's decided to do certain things. It's got this little guy sort of off to the side, so that's going to add a scar to the outside of the keycap. These two are okay, but there's just some, there's weirdness when it's trying to go through its algorithm on where to add supports. It does a fairly decent job, and you can get a good idea through practice on where you should be adding supports, and then get rid of them and do them yourself. So let's remove everything. And let's focus on the low-lying areas first. So this is the first spot where it's going to print. This is the first layer. that it's actually going to print of the model, not including the supports. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to hit all across here with 5 or so. I'm going to come up the sides. Since these are all sort of a reddish color, these all are needing support. So it's just sort of evenly distributed. So now I've got the base of the key taken care of, and now let's take care of the stem. Now the stem, I'll add here, and I'll add here, and I'll add here. Now everything else is on that 30-degree angle, this way, however you're looking at it. And so as it's printing up, because we're printing at such small resolution, now in this case I'll be printing at 100 microns. A lot of people print at 50 microns. Keycaps I print at 100. That angle in and of itself will help take care of this little ramp and print. And because it's at an angle, it will maintain the tolerances required to make this keycap fit. The stem will fit, everything will fit. This guy fits. He printed just like that. Now, from here, I can just go ahead and slice it, but and I chose to tip him back for a very specific reason. If I had tipped him forward onto his face, I would have had to support his chin and his nose and a couple of other areas probably. Tipping him back means these are all up at an appropriate angle to where I don't have to support them using supports. They'll just print no problem in midair. When you're ready to print, you go to your settings button. You select your printer. These are the 3 printers I have. I've got a Photon, a Mars, and a recent Sonic Mini. This one I'll be printing on the Mars. And again, so my layer height is 0.1 millimeters or 100 microns. Doing 5 bottom layers at 65 seconds each. And then my regular exposure for this red is 12 seconds per layer. Now if you're printing at 05, you can get away with less, like maybe 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds per layer. So if you've also got a Mars and you want to play with some other settings as far as your speeds and light on and light off delays, I have good results with this here. My Mars is I darn say a bat in 1,000, maybe 950. It's a solid printer, without a doubt. So anyway, no infill. I'm not using anti-aliasing for these. General resin stuff, don't mess with it. The machine settings are all the default machine settings when you bring in a new machine from the ad printer here. So we'll go to slice. We will walk through the preview here ever so quickly. And by the way, these things are so small, you don't need to hollow them if you're doing keycaps. Now, if you're doing something that's big, this is all judgment call. The general rule is if you can save resin, then save some resin. The keycaps are so small, the amount of resin I'd be saving is probably not worth the additional cleanup of adding holes and getting IPA inside the cavity to wash it all out. It's not worth the extra work. I'm just printing it solid. As you can see that this is going to be a grand total of about 12 cents, and it's going to take a little over an hour to print. So here I'd save that, save it off to my SD card, and throw it on the printer and go. So anyway, there you go. I hope this helps a little bit. Why don't we throw in one more quick example? So I'll get rid of this guy, and let's find something that's a little bit more round. So how about the Death Star? So I've got this Death Star keycap. So we'll do the same thing, and the reason I'm bringing this in is so that 300. Let's do a negative here. Let's tip them back. And the reason I want to show you this is because on round surfaces, specifically what you're looking for are islands. Just for grins, we're going to tip them back a little bit more. Yeah. Doing this just to prove a point. So you can see here, as you're checking your layers and where you want to add supports, whenever you get little islands like that, where this line is not connected to any adjacent line, that's an area where you definitely want to add support. And then you can come out from that line and add some additionals. So islands, islands are what you're supporting. Anything out there floating in midair that's going to print in midair is ultimately just going to stay in your vat and not go anywhere, and ultimately cause problems like punctured holes in your FEP and things like that. So be aware of the red areas, be aware of islands, and that's what you're trying to support. So there you go. Hope that's helpful. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.